Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel and I've got some massive news today. This is the tab of the news right here, so I'm going to build you up to that. Let's go. We know the euro is at 20-year lows, the yen at 24-year lows, and the pound at 37-year lows. We are watching these fiat currencies collapse before our eyes. We also know that inflation is running rampant, 17% in the Netherlands. We are seeing the Eurozone inflation reach 10%, the highest ever recorded. We know that these banks are the canary in the coal mine. We have seen Credit Suisse and Deutsche Bank. They have CDS levels now at the great financial crisis highs. These are the credit default swap levels all the way back at the 2008 financial crisis level. The Bank of England, the world's 8th oldest bank, the bank that served as the model for most of the world's central banks, today, this is Wednesday last week, acknowledged the only way pension funds will remain solvent is if the bank debases its currency to buy government debt. Can you see it yet? Said a more simple way, the entire UK pension system was about to get a margin call on Wednesday. The only reason those pension funds remain there is because the central bank pivoted to QE to prop them back up. If you're thinking of following talking heads on TV's advice into bonds, then think again. Don't be fooled by nominal yields of 4% over 2 years. Inflation could easily average 8% over the next 2 years. People are about to work out exactly why we Bitcoin. Let's keep going, because we know we have seen the Bank of England pivot as of Wednesday last week. We know that the Bank of Korea pivoted. The Bank of Japan started to defend its yen, and I said the Fed will be next. Remember, after the Bank of Japan has pivoted, it implies the ECB, the European Central Bank, is next to pivot, and then of course the US. We've just seen Germany deploy 200 billion in QE, and now, ladies and gentlemen, we have the Federal Reserve holding an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. An emergency meeting tomorrow morning. They're about to turn the printers back on, whilst they are still hiking rates into a slowing economy. They are about to fire these printers back up, just like everybody else did. We are about to see this pivot. The wheels are coming off of this financial system. If you do not exit the system now, while there is still a small amount of time to do so, then you are going to be a digital slave in a central bank digital currency world. Remember, Bitcoin was born out of the 2008 financial crisis for exactly this reason. In the Genesis block, they hard-coded the hidden message. The Times, 3rd of January 2009, the Chancellor on the brink of second bailout for banks. And now they are on the brink of the third bailout for banks. They will never stop doing this. They will never learn from their mistakes. Bitcoin is an IQ test for risk. I've been covering central bank digital currencies a lot on this channel as of late, and one thing that people don't seem to be able to comprehend, people seem to be able to accept most of what they see, but one thing that people really struggled to accept was that these currencies will expire if they're not used. Well, here you go.
Trying to warn people, China has just announced that their new central bank digital currency that they were going to force everybody to use in the country will expire. Remember when I told you that they're going to make a digital currency that you have to use, and then to make sure that you plebs and peasants will never be able to accumulate wealth, they're going to make that digital currency expire in your bank account if you don't spend your money. This enables the state to ensure that you and your children are low-class slave peasants for generations to come.
So, there you go. People are working it out though, because the day the Bank of England pivoted to QE, the Bitcoin GBP trading pair, volumes spiked over 1100%. The volume increased over 1100% as the British currency tumbled and the Bank of England had to restart quantitative easing. This is going to continue to happen. I have already worked this out. I'm sure if you're watching this channel, you have probably already worked this out. Now it's just a matter of time before everybody realizes that those that do not hold Bitcoin and gold do not have a chance. Bitcoin continues to improve, it continues to be adopted, it continues to accelerate. The largest banks in the world now hold $9 billion worth of Bitcoin and crypto, according to the Bank of International Settlements, which is the central bank to central banks. MicroStrategy is hiring a Bitcoin engineer to build an institutional Lightning platform. Bitcoin Lightning network capacity has just surpassed 4,900 Bitcoin. This is another all-time high. This continues to accelerate and continues to be adopted. Spain's largest telecoms company now accepts Bitcoin as payment. Binance just won regulatory approval to operate in New Zealand. And it's almost time. It is almost time to start this bull run. As I've been saying, we need to do a little bit more chop, I think, into that first week of November. About the 11th of November, the second week. And then I think we stand a good chance at emerging from this base. I don't believe that we take out the lows. And I think if we were to get an emergency pivot from the Fed, which I'm not calling for, all I'm saying is there is a emergency meeting tomorrow, and likely out of that, it's only a matter of a month or less before we actually see the pivot. I'm not suggesting they will pivot tomorrow, but they very well might. They very well might. And I think the second we see that pivot from the Fed, everything, the stock market, gold, Bitcoin, are all going to explode. We're also seeing oscillated divergence, bullish divergence. We've got a higher low on the momentum oscillator, the RSI, and a lower low on the price. I still think there's a few days left in these cycles yet. We've got a couple of weeks before we can find these cycle lows. But of course, a Fed pivot will force an early cycle low and an explosion to the upside. So with all that said, let's take a look at some charts. Dollar remains in an incredibly bullish uptrend. I think only until the Fed pivot, which I think could be just days away now. That remains to be seen. There's no denying that this is an incredibly powerful uptrend. I think we are slowly resolving this to a top now. I think we're getting very, very close. I don't really foresee it running more than 120. That remains to be seen. Despite all of these fiat currencies going to zero, Bitcoin continues to be stable, relatively stable. Again, I think regardless of how much chop, I think we remain between 25 and 17.5 until this 60-day cycle low, denoted by this vertical green line. Don't need this anymore. Let's clean this chart up and make sure we know exactly what we're looking at. So I think we get some sort of drop down into this cycle low. That becomes the long of all longs. Same is true of Ethereum. Drop into the 60-day cycle low for Bitcoin. And if you're looking to long Ethereum, I believe that would be the place to do it. XRP is apparently doing scenario 2. So you'll remember I said that scenario 1 was that we make a bull flag and then go. We didn't do that. Scenario 2 was that we come down and retest this and then go. That looks like what it's trying to do. Hopefully it is not going to do scenario 3 where it just bleeds out. But there's nothing I can do about this at the moment. I simply have to see what the market can give. So we've had a back test. Can we look to emerge out of here? We'll soon find out. Liking what I'm seeing from gold here. Perfect retest of the underside of this. I think this still could have a couple more days of upside. We could get a good bull trap here. But any move back up to here and rejection will be a short for me, looking for that drop down into this cycle low. There's a good chance that this is an early cycle low and that this will end up coming further back here. But there's no doubt in my mind, unless we can break this blue trend line, that this has got to play out to the downside towards the end of the year now. So still holding shorts for gold, looking to add. I will make sure I update you if I add to this short. Looking for a bit more upside, and then we're going to go max leverage to the short side, I think. Silver, not interested until we flip long, and the same is true of the miners. Oil working its way down. I think it can find a low fairly soon. Whether it makes it all the way down here or not remains to be seen. I think if oil can break out of this downtrend, which it likely would do on a Fed pivot, then that becomes a long, to the point where finally, having watched this market from the sides for as long as I have, having been as patient as I have, I'll leave this somewhere, and I'll leave this here for now, but I think whenever this breaks out, this becomes a long from me. So I haven't had a good read on this market for a while. I believe now I finally do. So that's the way to do it. You don't want to trade things you don't understand or that aren't intuitive to you. But I think we've spent enough time coming down. We're still heading towards our target. If we can break this line here, then I think it's time to set up a low risk to high reward trade for oil. MicroStrategy, I've said this before, I think if we can chop around and drop into that 60-day cycle low for Bitcoin, that becomes a buy from me in long-term accounts. And the same is true of Coinbase. I think we're going to continue down here. I think the only difference is it's not going to emerge all the way back here. I think this will likely emerge when we drop into that 60-day cycle low and go. So that remains to be seen. But I think anything above that low of 40 and below the blue line at 70 will be a decent position, a decent entry for Coinbase for the long term. I would be targeting about $400 for Coinbase. UKX, this could be a long. I think something like this on a trend line break. We'll see how it goes. I will update on this. If I decide to trade the FTSE 100, I'll let you know. VIX could well be a short from here. Something like this if you're interested. And lastly, the US equities. There is risk to the upside in the short term, followed by a drop down into that daily cycle low. The caveat to this would be, if we see a Fed pivot, then you better go long and you better go strong, in my opinion. At least that's what I will be doing. So we'll leave this here because I'm expecting this Fed pivot to come soon. But if not, I think it will come out of this daily cycle low next. I wouldn't be surprised if they announce perhaps that they're going to pivot on this date or around this date. That's usually how these cycles work. So anyway, that is the analysis from me today. I didn't put out a video yesterday, so I was on a stag do. We went quad biking and to a bunch of pubs and I had a really good time. But that's why I didn't put a video out yesterday. I was tied up all day. But I will be back to regular uploads as of today. Be paying particular attention to this Fed meeting on Monday, so I'll be making sure to cover that. We're making sure I update you on all of my trades. I think there is a lot of opportunity coming up. I think that I have a pretty good read of the markets at the moment. I think everything is quite clear what's going to happen. If you want to see how I deal with this in real time, make sure you subscribe and turn the notifications on. Follow me on Twitter if you're not already. If you found value here today, I'd appreciate it if you could drop a like on the video. I hope you're doing well in life. I hope you're ready for this reset. I hope you are starting to exit the system. And until tomorrow, all the best from me. Take care. Cheers. Bye.